Hello, welcome. So this is part 2, a continuation of last week's Facebook Live, where we were talking about the 3 things that you need to do right around the time that you decide to separate. And we talked about making sure that you have a plan, that you put a plan in place, and we talked about making sure that you take care of yourself. And the 3rd thing that you need to do that we're going to talk about this week is how to tell your children that you've decided to separate. So, welcome. My name is Dominique Landry. I'm a lawyer and divorce mediator and co-parenting coach. My mediation practice is called Resolution Law. You're likely watching this on my Resolution Law Facebook page. I'm really glad that we got to save this how to tell your children about the separation. I'm really glad that we got to save it for a separate video. It wasn't my initial intention when I started last week's, and we did run out of time, but I think it serves to sort of highlight how important it is, how this step to tell your children is really, really important. And as a result, it's really important that you don't sort of go in willy-nilly or blindly, and that you really do have a plan and you go in with intention on how you'd like it to go. So grab a pen and a piece of paper. There's a lot to cover, and I've got notes because there's so many little intricacies. I don't want to miss anything. The first 2 topics that we covered last week, we did sort of a eagle's eye view of it. We did sort of big picture, and we didn't get into a lot of detail, but for this one, I'm going to get into a little bit more detail because it just really is that important. So the most important thing to remember about telling your children that you've decided to separate is the goal that you want to keep in mind throughout the whole process. The main goal is to keep your children feeling safe or protected and loved. If you keep that in mind, everything's going to be okay, right? As long as you keep those things at the forefront of your discussions and your planning and everything that has to do with telling your children, things will go well. All right. Okay. So I've sort of broken it down into 3 stages. First is before you actually have the conversation with your children, and then there's the conversation itself. And then there's the period after the conversation. So that's sort of how we've broken it down. So for the first part then, before you tell them, most important thing there is to have a plan. So you want to sit down with your spouse and you want to talk about how you're going to tell your children, what you're going to tell your children, who's going to do the talking. Are you both going to do the talking or just one of you? And you want to be pretty specific because you want to make sure that you're on the same page. It's crucial that you present a united front to your children. So ideally, you would have this conversation together. And you want to choose your words carefully in that you want to make sure that you're conveying that this is a joint decision. Whether it actually is a joint decision or not, even if one of you hasn't fully come to terms with the end of the marriage yet, this is one of those times where your children need to know that their parents are a team, their parents have got this. We might be going into a difficult period, but mom and dad are going to make sure that we're okay. And if you don't present a united front, then it's really difficult to allow your children to feel safe and protected and loved, right? So the plan that you want to have in place before you actually have the conversation with the children is who's going to live where and how we're going to make sure that the children spend time with both parents. The thing that's important about the plan that you're going to put together, so this is the plan that you're going to have post-separation. The thing that's really important about that plan is, in order to allow your children to feel safe and protected, you're going to want to keep as much the same as you can. So you're going to want to keep your children's lives post-separation looking as similar as pre-separation. You want to change as little as possible, at least in the initial stages. If there are changes that need to be made, you're going to make the changes over time. You want to use the words that you're going to use when you speak to your children. as I said, ideally you would be able to speak to them together. I know emotions run high at this time, and I appreciate that might seem difficult for some of you, but it is really important that the children hear one message from both of you at once. They need to see, they need to feel, they can't be worrying about, what does mom or dad think about all of this? They need to see you. They need you to be in the same room. So whoever you decide is going to do the talking, it can be one, it can be both of you. If one of you is thinking that you're going to be really, really emotional and you're going to have a hard time holding it together, it's okay if one of you does most of the talking. You want to be sure that you use words like we and your father and I, as opposed to what I think or what I'm saying or what's happening. You want to avoid any kind of words that might cast blame on one parent or the other for the separation. You don't want your children to think that one parent is responsible for this. Because what that does is it conveys to the child that mom and dad aren't on the same page, and there are two sides to this. And as soon as your child thinks that there are two sides, they're going to feel like they have to pick a side. And of course, that's an impossible choice to make. And that's where it's what we call a loyalty conflict. You'll hear me talk more about that. And that's the thing we want to protect our children from. You want to avoid that loyalty conflict coming up. You don't want them to have to feel like there's two sides and that they have to pick one. The other thing that's really important in terms of what you're going to say to your children is that you want to give as few details as possible. The only thing your child needs to know or understand is what the separation means for them and that it's not their fault. Those are the two main messages that you want to convey to your children. And that may seem strange to think, well, why would the child think that it's their fault? But as it turns out, that really is one of the first things that comes up for a child. I mean, children are relatively self-centered, depending on the age. And the information I'm going to share with you today really applies pretty much across the board to all ages. There will be some differences that you'll know as parent how to handle, depending on whether your children are younger or teenage children or even adult children. So let's talk about the timing of when you're going to tell them. So it's really important that you not tell the children too far in advance of one of the parents moving out or too close to the time when one of the parents is going to be moving out. This is because so typically we talk about 2 to 4 weeks. If you tell the child about a month before, then that gives them enough time to sort of get their head around it and process it before it actually happens. But if you tell them more than 2 to 4 weeks ahead of time, then it gets them actually sort of anticipating it too much, and that can cause stress for them. And so we want to avoid that as much as possible. You also want to choose the specific moment when you're going to talk to them. You want to choose that time carefully. So you want it to be a time where the child is relaxed. Maybe you're relaxed as well, as relaxed as you can be, I suppose, knowing the conversation that you're going to have. You want to pick a time where no one has to rush off to bed or basketball or school or even a friend's house. So you want to pick a time where the conversation's only going to take about 10 or 15 minutes. And you want to pick a time where after you have the conversation that no one's going anywhere for a couple of hours so that the child has time to really process what you shared with them. All right, so that's before. So let's talk about during. So you've decided what you're going to say, how you're going to share the information with your children. And you've decided when, and now you're all sitting down, and it's time to tell them. You want to keep the delivery as brief as possible. So you're really just going to say, you know what? Mom and Dad have something really important to tell you. We want you to know that you might have noticed that we've been arguing a lot lately. Call attention to something that isn't going to be a surprise to them and that might even sort of validate what they've been thinking anyway. And so you want to say, you want to let them know, Mom and Dad have been having a hard time lately, and we've decided after a lot of discussion and a lot of thought, that the best thing for our family at this time is for mom and dad to live in 2 separate houses. And then you're going to explain to them, here's what I know. Here's what things are going to look like. So you want to share with them the plan that you have. Again, keeping in mind that they want to know, what does this mean for me? So how is this going to affect my day-to-day living? And you may, and so that's where you're going to want to emphasize, right? Emphasize as much as possible, like focus on the things that are going to stay the same. There are some things that are going to change. It's inevitable, but focus on the things that are going to stay the same to reassure them, to make them feel safe and protected. They'll ask questions, and that's when you can let them know more of the information, or there'll be lots of time to explain to them the things that are going to change. Reassure them that you love them, that you both love them, and that nothing is going to change that. It's okay for the kids to see that you're sad. That shows them that this is a big deal, and it wasn't an easy decision to come to. And it gives them permission to feel sad as well. But here's what's important. You want to hold it together enough that the child doesn't feel that they have to comfort you instead of worrying about how they're feeling about what you just told them. So that's really important. So once you've delivered that message, you want to just pause. You want to listen. You want to create space for the child then to ask you any questions or to respond. If there's silence, then ask them if they have any questions. The best way to make sure that you only give the child as much information as they can handle is to answer their specific questions and not offer more than what they're asking. I use the analogy of the sex talk. When your kids reach a certain age and you have to explain to them sort of where they came from and how all of that works. The experts always said that the most important thing is you don't want to overwhelm them. You don't want to give them more information than they're actually able to handle. So the tip that I remember from when my kids were that age was to only answer the specific question that they're asking. If they're asking the question, it's because they're ready for the answer, but don't volunteer more information than what they're actually asking. Keep it really simple. Less is absolutely more at a time like this. Now you need to be prepared for the fact that your kids are going to ask why. But here's what I need you to know. They don't really mean why. They don't want to know the details of why your marriage is ending. What they mean by why is this happening is they want to know if they caused it. What they really want to know is that it's not their fault. And this is where it's really important to explain to them that there's nothing that they did that caused this, and there's nothing they can do to fix it, because that's what they're going to try to do. They're going to think, well, gee, last time I heard mom and dad arguing, they were arguing about me because I was, misbehaving, or because I missed my curfew or whatever. They've been arguing about me. So does that mean their arguments are my fault? And we've gotten to this place because I haven't been on my best behavior, or I've been in trouble lately. And it's really important to nip that right in the bud and let them know that it has nothing to do with them. Nothing they did caused it, and nothing they can do now will fix it. That it's a grown-up decision, and that the grown-ups tried really hard to fix it and couldn't. And now we're going to do the next best thing for our family. So as you're bringing it to a close, as I said, the entire conversation might take 10 or 15 minutes. And your kids are probably going to tell you when they're done, when they're timed out. They might even just say, like, okay, can I go now? Are we done? Can I go to my room? And at that point, when you're bringing the conversation to a close, the most important thing you can do is let them know that they can ask you, that they can talk to you about this at any time, that they can ask you any questions, either of you, any questions at any time, and that you'll always have time or make time to listen to them. after, so now we're on the third segment, so after you've had the talk, after they've gone away, you're going to want to check on them. You're going to want to check on them in a couple of hours. Go find them in their room and sort of say, how you doing? How you feeling? I know that was a tough conversation to have. Check in. Don't force yourself on them, but just check in. Look for an opening. Look for them expressing a need for you to sit. They might want you to cuddle. They might want you to talk. They might want you to go away. Respect where they're at. So if they want to talk about it, great. If they don't want to talk about it, great. What you want to do in the hours and the days that follow is keep an eye on them, but don't force them to talk about it. Just because you think that if you were in their shoes, you'd want to talk about it, don't make that assumption. Just let them know that you're there for them at any time. The other thing you might want to offer to them is the possibility to speak to a professional at some point now or in the future. Let them know that that's always an option for them, and if they need someone other than a parent to talk to about it. And then you're just going to want to watch their behavior. You're going to watch for cues on how they're coping. So you're going to want to watch things like, their eating patterns and their sleep patterns and any sort of behaviors that seem unusual. And so you're looking for changes in all of these things, right? If little Johnny wasn't a great sleeper before and he's not a great sleeper now, well, that might not be might not be helpful information to you. But what you're looking for is changes in behavior, changes in moods or emotional patterns, sleep and eating patterns. It's a good idea to check in with their teacher. Let the teacher know what's going on, and invite the teacher to also look for cues, any changes in the classroom. Are they fighting with their classmates all of a sudden? Are they tired? Are they cranky? Are there outbursts? Are they not performing as well in school? So keep an eye on those things. And it's really important as you move forward to create opportunities for your child to confide in either of you. Now, that doesn't mean sort of picking at them and poking at them and being like, are you sure you don't want to talk about it? No. But look for opportunity to be alone with your child. If you have more than one child, sometimes it's difficult to find opportunities to be alone. But look for opportunities like when you're, in the car on the way to the pool or the gym or the track, and just feel them out. Just let them know that you're there and that you have the ability to hold space for them at any time that they want to talk about this. I want to talk a little bit about sort of things to keep in mind throughout, before, during, after, the whole time. And some of it's going to be a little bit of a recap. So as I said, you can't reassure them enough that it's not their fault. If you see any sort of an inkling about them asking questions, does this have anything to do with the fact that I stayed out past my curfew, or that I've been giving you and Dad a really hard time lately? Does that have anything to do with that? You always want to reassure them that it's not their fault. You want to reassure them that they are going to continue to have the love and support of both of their parents. Parents can divorce each other, but parents never divorce their children. That is really important for them to understand, especially if they're younger, right? You want to listen to what they have to say to you without judgment and without getting defensive. You want to respect their feelings. They may be really angry with you. They may think that you didn't try hard enough, and they may be really angry with you, and that's okay. You need to allow them to feel what they're feeling and work through those feelings. I say to my clients, you have every right to end your marriage. That is the decision that parents can make. And your kids have every right not to like it. And so you have to respect that. It's really important to respect that. And it's important to respond to the fears and the concerns they share with you rather than react. Again, there's that, try not to be defensive. Listen to their fears and their concerns, and don't make them right or wrong. Know that whatever fears they have, and it's important for you to address them. You want to, throughout the whole process, it's really important to protect your children's childhood. I know that might sound a little bit funny, but in subtle ways, we can make the child feel like they have to hurry up and grow up, and that's harmful to them. So we don't want to share adult information with them. That stuff's just for the adults. They don't need to know. They don't need to know that you're concerned about your finances, or that you're concerned about, how this is impacting your performance at work. You don't need to share that with them. You're the parent. They're the child. You want them to know that even though this is a difficult period, that you've got everything under control, and that the two of you are working together to make sure that they're taken care of. You may want to ask their input on certain decisions that you're making, but make it clear that as the parent, you are making the decisions. We talked about this last week. It's really important for you to take care of yourself, because the last thing you want is for your child to feel like they have to take care of you. They have to sort of, step up and make sure that you're not sad or that you're not feeling lonely. It's important that you and your co-parent, that both parents communicate regularly about just sort of kid-related details. When the soccer game is, how you're going to get the soccer gear to the other parent, when the project is due, that sort of thing. You never want the child to feel like they have to be the go-between between the two parents because the two of you aren't talking to each other. You really want them to see the two of you communicating well, because again, that's going to help them to feel safe and protected, because they know that you two are working together as a team and that you've got this under control. You want to avoid throughout this whole process creating a loyalty conflict. We talked about that. It is harmful to your children when they feel like there are two sides. And so you want to avoid, you don't want them to feel bad when they're spending time with another parent. You want them to enjoy their time with each parent. You never want them to feel like they're missing out on something fun because they're with the other parent and they're not with you. It's important to celebrate special occasions together as much as possible. You want your child to feel like they don't have to choose between which parent is going to share this particular special occasion with them. There are certain occasions that are just really important to your child to have both parents there at the same time. Ultimately, you want to show your child that even though as parents you live in two separate homes, if you can convey to your child that you're still a family and that as a family you're going to work together to get through this difficult time, you will absolutely go a long way to letting your child feel safe and protected and, of course, loved. Okay, well, I think that's everything that I wanted to cover. I know it's a lot. I know it's a lot to take in. I'd invite you maybe to watch this video more than once. Stay tuned. I've been getting some really good questions in my private messages. So I've got a couple of ideas for the next few weeks, and I think you'll see a combination of me coming on here live for shorter pieces, and you'll also see me coming on here with pre-recorded stuff that I'll do for maybe the longer, like the more teaching stuff like this. And I'm hoping to come on more often rather than, I think what you'll see is once a week we'll absolutely have a learning video come on, and then maybe 2 or 3 other times during the week some quick little snippets. Now that we've laid the foundation for a lot of the concepts we're going to talk about, I feel like I can come on and just for 5 or 10 minutes and just share a quick little tidbit of information that I might have shared with a client that day, or that I might have a question that might have come in that I can answer really quickly. So thank you very much for your time and your attention. And thank you for wanting to do things the right way for your children, for wanting to put their needs above all else as you navigate this difficult period of time. Thanks. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.